Hey guys, tonight we slip through the wooden doors of a cramped, smoky cottage where the floor's mostly dirt, and the air smells like wet wool and burnt onions. Something skitters across the rafters. You freeze, listening. Yep, rats again. You hear them more than you see them, but when you do see them, it's always mid-bite. Into your last turnip. Welcome to peasant life in the Middle Ages. There's no pest control hotline. No peppermint oil spray, and definitely no closing the app and pretending it's someone else's problem. Nope. This is your grain, your health, your survival. And it's all up for grabs tonight. Oh, and here's a fun reality check. If the rats don't get you, the diseases they drag behind them just might. You probably won't survive this unless you get creative. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do. Hey, drop your location and what time it is where you are. I love seeing where we're all listening from across the globe. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You trudge across uneven floorboards, bowl in hand, praying there's still something edible inside the pantry. But surprise, there's a mouse lounging on your only carrot like it owns the place. In medieval Europe, rodents aren't just a nuisance. They're the kind of roommates that raid your food, spread plague, and then chew your mattress for dessert. Still, you're not helpless. Not entirely. You've got tricks, and your best one, purring, hissing, tail twitching, and sharper than your uncle's scythe. You get a cat, not the velvet pillow princesses prancing through castles. No, you need the kind bred in barn rafters. Born half feral, eyes locked onto every squeak. In 1300s Europe, these cats were serious business. The good ones, the real killers, could fetch a price that today would rival a new gaming console. Historians still argue whether some towns actually taxed these top mouses less or simply gave their owners a few free pints to keep them happy. Either way, owning one could mean the difference between dinner on the table and dinner stolen. And don't even think about stealing someone's prized mouser. That's not just rude, it's punishable. In some villages, it could land you before the manor court. Because this wasn't just a cat. It was a four-legged food security system. Silent, sharp, never asked for overtime. But how do you know if a kitten's going to grow up to be a rat-slaying legend? Easy. You toss a string. You watch. Does it pounce like a mini lion? Good. Keep it. Does it blink at you like it's questioning your life choices? Yeah. No. That one's going to your cousin in the next village. A lazy cat is a liability. Another mouth to feed. Most peasants could barely spare bread for the kids, let alone a nap-happy feline diva. The good mouses were gritty, stocky, short-tailed for balance in tight spaces. That intense hunter's stare, the medieval version of a job interview. Fail it, and you're out. And if your cat did pass the test, it was pampered in the strangest ways. Not with gold collars or feather beds, but with leftovers, warm barns, and maybe, if it caught over 50 rats in a month, a free drink for you at the local tavern. That actually happened. One record tells of such a beast earning its own a free ale and small-town glory. Mainstream fact, the Black Death wiped out nearly half of Europe's population between 1347 and 1351, and rats played a starring role. But oddly, cats were sometimes blamed too and killed. A move historians now agree likely made the plague worse, not better. Quirky detail, some towns actually kept score. Your cat's kills could be tallied in manor records. Imagine explaining that. Today, yes, Mr. Jenkins, this line here in your taxes is for your cat's murder count. Yet, even the best cats had limitations. Some rats were smarter or sneakier. They slipped into places no cat could follow. That's when peasants turned to the next weapon in their furry arsenal, the trained ferret. Not exactly house pet material. Ferrets were the medieval snake camera, long, narrow, squirmy little hunters that could wriggle into cracks, burrows, even between walls. You didn't just find these guys and wish them luck. No, they had to be trained, handled, rewarded. Young ferrets learned to return after every mission, and to make sure they didn't get stuck or vanish under the floorboards forever. Peasants tied tiny bells or bits of fabric to their necks. Tracking, technology, 14th century style. And once that ferret caught a scent, it was relentless. Rats would panic, run for their lives, and sometimes straight into the claws of a cat, cleverly stationed at the holes on the exit. This was your classic medieval pincer move. Rat had no chance. Historians still argue whether peasants bred ferrets locally or traded them from town to town. What we do know, a single ferret could clear an entire granary in a few hours. That's more efficient than most modern IT teams. But ferrets weren't for everyone. They needed food, training, patience. What if you had none of those? That's when things got spicier. You reach for your herb pouch. Crushed mint, garlic, maybe a pinch of mustard seed. Not for dinner, but for the doorway. Turns out rats hate strong smells. Mint, especially. You sprinkle it along the window ledge. Rats get one whiff and bounce. They think you're running a medieval breath mint factory. No thanks. Garlics. Another good one. Crushed cloves in the corners of the pantry act like medieval freshness for your food and medieval nightmares for the rats. The sulfur stings their tiny noses. It's like walking into a room filled with rotting gym. Sucks and regret. Even wormwood, that bitter herb, still used in absinthe today, made the cut. Peasants didn't love the smell, but they did love watching rats scamper away from it like their tails were on fire. Quirky tip, some folks would soak rags in garlic juice and dangle them like stinky streamers from the rafters. Nothing says romantic dinner like aggressive herb deterrents. The best part, these smells didn't just repel rodents. They helped cover the scent of unwashed family members, too. That's a win-win in any century. But let's say your nose can't handle mint and garlic 24/7. What then? You go bitter. You go mustard seed. You create what historians now jokingly refer to as the hot sauce obstacle course. Rats would rather skip meals than cross that spicy gauntlet. You mix it all together. Mint, garlic, wormwood, mustard powder, a splash of vinegar. Apply liberally to every rat entry point. Your house now smells like the aftermath of a very angry salad. But, hey, you'll sleep easier, at least until something goes bump under the floorboards. You lie in bed listening, again, to something rustling behind the walls. The mint's not cutting it tonight. The garlic rag drooped off its nail. And the cat? She's curled up beside you, snoring like a tiny, furry blacksmith. Looks like it's time to escalate. You shuffle to the hearth and grab the forbidden pouch from behind a loose stone. Inside, flakes of hemlock, bits of chalky arsenic, and the glassy glint of something that really shouldn't be food. Tonight, you're going full medieval poison before you wince too hard. Remember, you're not just trying to keep rats out of your snacks. You're trying to stop them from spreading disease, breeding in the flour, and gnawing through your roof. And if that means using things that could also wipe out half your family by accident, well, that's just another Wednesday in the 1300s. Back then, there were no measured warning labels, no hotline for accidental ingestion. There was just you, the ingredients. Your cousin's uncle swore worked, and a whisper of a prayer that your kid didn't mistake it for cookie crumbs. Mainstream fact, white arsenic, a naturally occurring mineral, was widely used in early Europe, not just as rat poison, but also in paints, cosmetics, and, yes, sometimes as medicine. Historians agree people didn't quite grasp how horrifyingly toxic it was. The typical medieval poison recipe? Start with something deadly, like arsenic, powder, or ground hemlock. then disguise it in something rats couldn't resist: a smear of lard, a crumb of cheese, a sticky coating of honey. Some peasants even used wine, because if you're going to go out with a buzz, right? And if the poison didn't work fast enough, there was always ground glass. No, really. They believed the shards would shred a rat from the inside out. Whether it actually worked is highly debated. Historians still argue whether the rats died from internal injury or just from eating something so profoundly awful. Either way, it was effective if you didn't mind the risk. And the risk was huge. A French account from 1329 tells of an entire household falling ill when poison bait got dragged into the flour sacks. Dinner that night came with a side of panic and possibly a ghost or two. Eventually, some towns tried banning certain poisons. One English village prohibited arsenic altogether after 3 kids died in a single month. Did it stop people? Of course not. They just got sneakier, mixing small batches, hiding them in cloth bundles, leaving them behind rafters or under floorboards. It was like Breaking Bad, but with more onions and fewer explosions. The irony? It never fully worked. Rats bred faster than you could kill them. For every rodent that dropped dead beside a poisoned cheese cube, 2 more were already tunneling under the granary. So you moved to something safer, simpler, earthier. You dig a hole. Pit traps. Basic. Brilliant. Barely cost a thing. You find the rat paths, usually along the walls or near the grain, and carve small. Pits about 6 to 8 inches deep. Just deep. Enough to keep the little monsters from hopping out. Then you line the bottom with smooth clay. Or, better yet, grease the walls with animal fat. Slippery, gross, impossible to climb. It's the medieval version of a hotel with no exits. You check the pits at dawn, a wooden bucket in one hand, your kid in the other. They think it's a game. You think it's survival. Either way, you get results. Quirky. Twist. Some clever trappers added bait sticks across the pit. Balance food in the middle. Rat steps out. Stick. Spins. Rat drops. It's basically a seesaw of doom. Mainstream fact. Manor record from the 1340s shows some households caught over 60 rats in a single week, using a system of pit traps alone. It's not glamorous, but it gets the job done. You empty the pit, reset the trap, and move on. But what about the rats who don't stick to the floorboards? The ones with dreams, ambition, higher ground? That's when need to get loud. Sound, believe it or not, was a legitimate rat control method in the Middle Ages. Not just yelling at rats, though. We've all done it. We're talking rat whistles, metal, clatter devices, bone flutes, anything to make a high-pitched noise that freaked out the rats without driving you to madness. Peasants noticed that loud celebrations or blacksmithing scared the rodents off, so they leaned into it, crafted hollow reeds, carved bird bones, and made whistles that humans could barely hear, but rats? Rats hated them. The sound hit some primal panic button. Rats would bolt out of granaries like someone yelled cheese. Tax. Some towns even had a designated rat piper. No, not the one from the fairy tales. A real person who made weekly rounds playing their little screechy tune. The rats would flee, usually into traps or into waiting paws. Historians still argue whether these whistles truly repelled rats or just startled them long enough to be caught. Either way, it made people feel in control. That count for something. And if you didn't have a whistle, you made noise however you could. Bang pots, stomp your feet, let the kids loose. In a barn with sticks and instructions to go nuts. Evening rat scaring became family bonding time. Like a very loud, slightly violent bedtime story. Quirky detail. Some homes hung thin metal sheets from a ceiling. The breeze, or even a passing cat, would jostle them, creating sudden clinks and clangs. To you, it sounds like a medieval kitchen meltdown. To the rats, that's the alarm bell. But there was a catch. Rats are smart. Predictable noise became part of the background. If you banged the same pot in the same rhythm every night, rats started swaying to it like it was lullaby hour. So you had to switch it up. Random chaos was key. Too predictable. 1-star review from the local rats. Would nest again. Still, sound was safer than poison, cheaper than hiring a ferret whisperer, and didn't require a cat with an attitude problem. But what if you didn't want to bang pots every night? What if you preferred peace and pest? Control? You fake it. You carve a predator. You squint in the low candlelight, admiring your latest masterpiece. A wooden owl with paint peeling off its beady eyes and a feather glued awkwardly to its head. It's not elegant. It's not even symmetrical. But to a rat, hopefully, it screams danger loud, enough to inspire an existential crisis. You've joined the elite ranks of medieval peasants who rely on fake predators to keep their food safe. No food, no problem. You'll trick the enemy with artistic lies and a bit of wishful thinking. Turns out rats have natural fears. Owls, snakes, big paws, sudden death. So why not lean into that? Carve a wooden owl. Paint it like it means business. Maybe add some feathers, position it in a dark corner, and hope rats are too stressed to investigate closely. Quirky detail. Some folks went wild with it, using clay to sculpt open-mouthed snakes and hiding them under straw. A sort of rat-level horror film playing 24/7 in your storage shed. Mainstream fact, just like today's. Garden owls meant to scare away birds, medieval people used fake animals to spook rodents. Some villages even had competitions for who could carve the most realistic predator decoy. But there's a problem. Rats are smart, really smart. After a while, they stop caring. They chew the owl's face off. They nap inside its hollow head. There's even a record of rats using a fake hawk's base as a nesting site. Nice wingspan, terrible landlord. So what do? You adapt. You rotate the decoys. Move them daily. And new ones. A snake on Monday, an owl. On Tuesday, a wooden fox by the weekend. It's basically medieval set design, all for an audience that never applauds, just runs away or poops in your bread bin. One German manuscript from the 1400s even describes a motion-sensitive hawk toy rigged to rock in the wind. Imagine it. You're a rat, sneaking through a grain store, and suddenly a painted bird starts swaying like it sees you. Nope, not today. Historians still argue whether these decoys were truly effective or just gave peasants something to feel in control about. But in a world without options, feeling like you did something was almost as valuable as results. But you're running out of wood, and rats are still showing up like it's buffet night. So you go even more primal. You gather yourself, literally. Your comb fills with hair. You don't throw it out. You save it. Fingernails? Same deal. Wear clothes drenched in sweat. They get a second life. You're making a perimeter, not with bricks or spells, but with bodily byproducts. Yeah, it's gross, but so are rats. And guess what? Rats hate human scent. Or at least, that's what your grandfather always said. So you take clippings of hair, stuff them into little pouches, and tuck them around the walls. You sprinkle nails like bitter confetti in storage corners. You hang sweat-drenched shirts near the pantry like very sad laundry flags. And urine? Yes, you save that too. Urine from the chamber. Pot is soaked into cloth and placed near entry holes. Some even recommend designated peeing corners outside the home to create a smell fence. Male urine was considered stronger, especially after a nice garlic-heavy stew. Quirky note. One guidebook insists that post-garlic pee works best because apparently nothing scares a rat like the pungent whiff of garlic-scented peasant fear. Mainstream fact. Many animals, including rats, do have strong reactions to predator scents, including humans. So this technique, as ridiculous as it sounds, might have actually worked. Historians still argue whether the urine method repelled rats consistently or just made the house smell like an outhouse with delusions of grandeur. Still, it cost nothing. And in a world where every coin mattered, that made it gold. But let's be honest, none of these methods are perfect. Rats are determined, especially in winter. You need a backup plan, something practical, long-term. You look up, literally. Medieval peasants learned quickly. If you couldn't kill rats or scare them off, you had to outsmart them. So they built food, storage systems the rodents couldn't reach. The first trick? Hanging your food. You take your grain, your dried meat, your prized apple if you're lucky, and you tie in a sack. Then you hoist that sack into the air using ropes from the ceiling beams, high up, swaying gently, far from any furry paws. And the bonus? You add little metal discs to the ropes, early squirrel guards. If a rat tries to climb, it hits the disc and either slips off or gives up entirely. Sure, you're living. Room now looks like a barn-themed mobile art installation, but your food stays safe. Next level, sealed containers. Clay pots with tight lids, closed with beeswax or pitch. Wooden boxes sealed with resin. Flower chests that feel more like treasure vaults than kitchen storage. Mainstream. Fact. Monasteries and manors began sealing food inside wax-lined containers as early as the 12th century. Some even stored bread in wooden boxes lined with pine tar, unappetizing to rats and humans alike. You build an elevated food platform for sturdy legs, each leg capped with a wide disc to stop climbers. A grain castle with no ladders. One monk even wrote that after implementing this design, grain loss dropped from 20% a year to less than 5%. Not bad for something held together with spit and pine sap. And for the overachievers out there, greased pole storage. A pole slick with fat or oil standing upright with food on top. Looks ridiculous. Works beautifully. Rats may be agile, but nobody can cling to a buttered broomstick. Quirky touch. Some peasants joked that watching a rat try to climb a grease pole was the poor man's theater. There are even illustrations of it, little rats sliding down like furry toboggans. But hunger changes everything. If you're truly desperate, if the winter is long and the children's bellies are louder than the rats, well, you do the unthinkable. You eat the rats. You stare at the little carcass turning on a spit, barely bigger than a fist. The smell's not terrible. Some herbs, a splash of wine, maybe a bit. Too much garlic, but you're not fooling yourself. That's no bird. That's a rat. This is where all the traps, poisons, garlic bundles, and owl decoys have led you not to a rat-free home, but to rat stew in your bowl. In the worst famine years, this wasn't even seen as strange. When bread was a memory and grain was just a rumor, people got creative. Some hunted rats intentionally. Others waited by the pit traps with a knife. And grim resolve. Mainstream fact, during the Great Famine of 1315 to 1317, entire communities in Europe resorted to eating anything that moved, including rodents. While cities documented larger-scale starvation, countryside families often had to rely on whatever was nearby. And nearby was rats. You'd clean them, of course, boil them, skin them if you could, then stew them with onions, maybe cabbage. Sometimes garlic if you weren't using it to scare off the next meal. Quirky twist. One chronicle describes a merchant selling forest chicken in the village square, a code word for rat meat that somehow made it to market stalls beside salted fish and stale barley bread. Historians still argue whether this practice was widespread or mostly confined to famine-struck areas. What's certain is that rats went from food thieves to actual food, often within the same desperate winter. But even if you never eat one, you're still fighting them every day, and the fight never ends. One night, the mint fails, the poison gets knocked over, the decoy owl falls into the fire. You do everything right, and still you hear the skittering behind the walls like laughter, because rats don't care about fairness. They care about crumbs, warmth, and shadows. Still, you don't give up. You mix another vinegar mint mustard rag. You check the pits. You tell the kids to stomp louder. You whisper encouragement to the cat, who opens one eye and promptly goes back to sleep. And slowly, you begin to realize pest control isn't just a battle. It's a lifestyle. It's noisy, smelly, creative, and constantly one step behind. But when you wake up and find your food untouched, your traps full, and your home quiet for just a moment, you feel like a wizard. You, dear peasant, have one night. Now, as the fire softens to a glow, and the cat curls tighter by your feet, you let her muscles ease. The flickering shadows no longer hide movement. The house is still, blessedly so. Outside, the wind hums across the roof like a lullaby. No distant squeaks, no midnight claws, just the gentle creak of timber, the quiet drip of melting frost from the eaves, and the faint smell of garlic lingering like a protective spell. Your food is safe. Your traps are reset. Your decoy owl, now propped back on the shelf with a chipped eye, watches over the room like some half-melted saint of rodent. Fear. Tomorrow might bring more skittering and scratching, more clever rats with new tricks, but for tonight, you've done enough. The villagers sleep. The ferrets rest. Even the rats, somewhere in the fields, keep their distance. You breathe in slowly, mint, smoke, old wood. The kind of air that says, just for now, you've carved out a little space of peace. In a world always teetering on the edge of chaos, you are, in your own way, a keeper of the hearth, a guardian of the pantry, a soft-footed warrior against the night. So pull the blanket higher. Let the weight of the day melt into the mattress. And if you hear the faintest noise behind the walls, let it be a reminder, not of what's coming, but of what you've overcome. Sleep well. Friend, the rats can wait.